to another Florida-friendly landscaping educational program. Today we're going to talk about Much Ado About Mulch. I am Lilly Browning. I work for Hernando County Utilities in water conservation. I am the Florida-friendly landscaping program coordinator. Here are the 9 principles of Florida-friendly landscaping. Today we are going to cover principle number 4, which is mulch. You wouldn't think there'd be a whole lot to talk about in just mulch, but there really is, so much so that it is one of the main principles of Florida-friendly landscaping, because I always compare it to watering. It is usually something very important, but something that if you do it wrong, can cause more problems than it solves. So first off, what is mulch? When we say the word mulch, what is it? It is a layer of material placed on the soil surface, really that simple. It can be anything that is placed on the soil surface to kind of cover it up. I don't remember a lot of mulching going on when I was very little. My mother always had a very well cared for yard. But in the 70s, she was a little older. She was an older mother. So she did things as they did, as she grew up through the Depression and through the 30s and 40s. And I don't remember, her utilizing mulch other than what was already naturally in the yard. And she just usually let it be there. I think as people became more urban and there became more communities and the natural areas were taken away in an effort to replace that through the late 70s, 80s, through the 90s, people were becoming more wise to the way of nature, really, and they were utilizing mulch. Not only does it look good, it makes a yard look really good, but it brings a lot of good things back to our soil. So there are a couple types of mulch. There's organic material. That is bark, wood chips, leaves, pine needles, grass clippings, all of those things, which are naturally part of our ecosystem. Then there's inorganic materials that people tend to use from time to time. Gravel, rocks, pebbles, rubber, polyethylene film, or woven ground cloth. I think if you watched enough of my programs, you're going to know which type I'm going to lean towards, of course. What are the benefits of mulch? Why do we do it? Well, the main reason is here in Florida, it improves our soil. We have a lot of sandy soil to work with. So just adding that organic material into the soil does help improve it. It doesn't add nutrients per se. What it will do is as the mulch breaks down into the soil, or like any kind of composting material, it will help improve the nutrient holding and the water holding capacity of our sandy soils. It makes maintenance a wee bit easier. It improves plant performance, depending on the type of plant. We're going to get into that as well. It does add beauty to the landscape, and it can suppress weeds. Of course, we've all seen mulch beds absolutely full of weeds. So we're going to kind of discuss why that happens, when that happens, all that sort of thing. So organic material improves soil structure and fertility, as we mentioned. It also buffers soil temperatures when, it might be 105 degrees, outside in the air. That layer of mulch is going to help keep that soil a little bit warmer and protected from the heat. Also from cold weather as well. It minimizes erosion and it helps prevent stormwater runoff. That is one of the Florida-friendly landscaping 9 principles. Prevent stormwater runoff. Mulching will help do that as well. So, as we mentioned, it improves the water holding capacity of the soil, but also lets water go through. It helps reduce compacted soil if you have that in your yard. It prevents water loss by evaporation, by its covering up that soil, keeping that moisture in there. It can inhibit some weed seed germination. We'll discuss that, and suppress weed growth. We will discuss how that works, when it doesn't work. So it helps with plant performance. As again, we said, it enriches the nutrient holding capacity of the soil. It cools the radiant temperature around the plants. It helps reduce some weed competition. And basically what it does is mimic natural woodlands. It also helps our landscapes look good. This is a look, that we have learned to expect now. I always say that a mulched flower bed is pretty much like making your bed in your bedroom at home. Your bedroom doesn't look clean really until the bed is made, does it? So just same, with your flower beds in your landscape, they don't quite look done until the mulch is done in them. So it helps provide some uniformity, contrast, maybe a variety of colors in your landscape, interesting textures, adding different textures into your landscape, and gives that landscape a finished appearance. It also helps define the plant beds so that the plants in it may be protected from lawn equipment damage. See here, there's just a tiny bit of mulch around this tree, and someone was trying to weed eat the grass around it, and look what happened. Of course, the trunk of the tree got caught up in the weed eater. It would be much better for this tree if this grass was taken out and this was a whole mulched area so that the weed eaters would stay away from it. So there are frequently asked questions about mulch. So we're going to cover all of those. What type of mulch is best? How much mulch should I apply? What's the best way to fight weeds under the mulch, on the mulch? Will mulch attract bugs? And will mulch attract termites? That's a big question. So let's get into these questions. But first, let's do a little bit, very tiny bit of chemistry. There is something called allelopathy. Some plants have allelopathic abilities, capacities. What does that mean? What's that big word mean? It means that there are chemicals inside of these plants that inhibit plant growth. That you may say that doesn't make any sense. It kind of does, that it inhibits any other kind of plant growing there. So they have a chemical inside them and they're trying to reduce competition from other types of plants. So they emit this chemical and only that kind of plant can grow there. So fresh mulches, some of them have these chemical properties because they've been freshly cut. They still emit those chemicals. So that is where, if you get the right type of mulches at the right stage, but it's careful, you've got to be careful there too, and I'll tell you why. It can inhibit weed seed growth, fresh mulches. Once it has, weathered a while, then it no longer has those properties. So weeds can go, grow as they wish. So the positive effects of these allelopathic chemicals are that it can inhibit weed growth. The negative effect is if you're trying to grow something else that you want to grow there in young bedding plants, well, of course, it's going to inhibit them as well. So you have to walk that fine line. Maybe throw down the fresh mulch in a bed where you want to kill weeds, and just leave the mulch there for a while before you start to plant anything in it. That might, you might catch it at the right time for that. There we go. See this poor weed here, it says it can't breathe because this particular mulch is helping control nutgrass and Johnson grass. With the seeds, large weeds could get through, but they are more easily pulled in mulch. Still got to do some maintenance. Let's talk about the kind of mulches that Florida Friendly Landscaping and the University of Florida recommends. Pine bark is one of them. It is a product of the forest and the lumber industry. It is readily available, usually. I have a story about that, I'll tell you. I like the pine bark because they decompose slower, so I get to keep them longer. It retains its color well, and the large size works really well to mechanically block out weeds by covering it up. And nurseries are beginning to find out that if they just put, some chips, place them in pots, it's mechanically going to cover up any weed growth inside of their pots. So they're finding that they have to do a lot less pulling or a lot less spraying just by using the mulch. Going back to readily available, when I made this PowerPoint, yes, very readily available. But we're going through a stage right now in the world where many odd and different things are not as readily available. I was trying or my husband was trying to get some mulch, some pine bark mulch from a local, rock and mulch place. The pine bark was not available, and they were saying it was due to storms, in Louisiana and Mississippi, where a lot of the pine trees grow, that they just wasn't accessible to get to them to get the mulch. It's my theory that staffing and truck drivers and stuff are also might be an issue with that at this moment in time. You can probably still get it in bags at the store, but we were trying to get it in bulk and it just wasn't as available. Maybe that issue's already cleared itself up, but just kind of be aware of that as well. Pine straw, another good one, and it may, if it is an issue of the the pine plantations not being available because can't get there because they're flooded out, pine straw might be an issue as well. There may be shortages of that. If you're like me and you have a little extra natural areas in your yard, I got plenty of free pine straw. All I got to do is get a rake and rake it up. But it is also a product of the timber industry. I know somebody whose mother runs a bunch of pine forests, managed pine forests in Georgia. She makes more money on the pine straw that falls than she does on the lumber itself. It's a big thing in Atlanta. It's the thing to have. So it's fairly readily available. It will decompose rapidly, though. Obviously, it's straw. It's not big bark. But it is high in nutrients, and it has the highest allelopathic effect, meaning from the pine, the pine oils. It has that highest effect of keeping those weeds away for you. Melaleuca mulch. This is a way that you can help control an invasive tree in South Florida. The Melaleuca tree, also called the punk tree, it was planted in South Florida to dry up the Everglades so people could farm. It did its job really well, and it's an invasive exotic. I'm sure you've all heard of tea tree with tea tree oils. This is the same thing. So when you harvest the mulch, you got to be careful and get it sterilized and get it, prepackaged. I have heard from people in South Florida who tried to get it where someone just shredded down a melaleuca tree. Well, they brought the mulch home, and of course, melaleuca trees started, to try to grow in their yard. So you want it heat treated, buy it in bags at a store. It is fairly well available in any big box store. The last I knew of it might go under the brand name Eco Mulch or Flora Mulch even. So, and it has a slow decomposition rate. Now, I just told you that a melaleuca tree is a tea tree. What do we think of when we think of tea trees? We think of the oil. So it has some of those allelopathic properties. Remember, for a while, it won't change your soil pH, keeps its color. Well, actually, it ages into a nice silvery kind of color, and it has fairly small kind of pieces. It is low in nutrients. It's not as attractive to termites. We're going to cover termites in a little bit. So don't think it won't attract termites. But for that period of time when it is emitting the volatile oils and having those allelopathic properties, won't be quite as attractive to termites. Eucalyptus mulch. They grow, they have plantations of eucalyptus trees. They grow very quickly. It's a very sustainable practice. So it's a good thing to purchase. And I believe you can get this in any garden center as well. It has good color retention. It's not quite as durable. It'll degrade a little faster. It settles, decreasing its volume. It doesn't have all those great nutrients either, but it has the good allelopathic properties. So you're seeing the theme here, something that you can associate in another, another use as something that produces oil, pine oil, melaleuca oil, tea tree oil, eucalyptus oil. They're going to have those good allelopathic properties until that wears out. Now, some people, like to save money and use utility mulches, and they're available out there. You can follow the tree cutters and, ask for some of, their chippings. But you want to be careful. The good things are obviously that it's free. It is of questionable quality. They have one job. Their job is not to find you good mulch. That's not their job at all. Their job is for public safety on the roads and the sidewalks. So they will cut things away from power lines. They will cut things so you can see properly while driving down the street. They will cut things so you can walk down the sidewalk. What things they are cutting, they don't care. Their job is to get that stuff out of the way. So could be invasive trees. You don't know what kind of weeds, are hanging out with the stuff that they cut down, or even insects. And the other thing is, it's very, 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 very hot. They just cut it down. So yeah, it'll kill weeds and then it'll kill everything else too, while it is still very green, still breaking down. It's going to emit a lot of heat and a lot of energy. So if you decide you want to do that, don't put it on your flower beds immediately. Put it in a pile in your yard to season quite a while to break down. And maybe while it is breaking down, it might kill some of those weeds, but you don't want to rely on that, as well. Recycled yard waste. This is the way nature does it. Out in the woods, what happens? Trees lose their leaves, they fall on the ground. Insects use that leaf litter as part of their life cycle. The leaves turn into soil, all the circle of life there. So we can replicate that in our yards with leaves, twigs, pine needles, even Spanish moss. And that is definitely free, right there, readily available, high in nutrients, again, because we're mimicking nature. Now, grass clippings, some people use grass clippings. It is a better idea to use grass clippings as mulch than to throw your grass clippings away. That is for sure. But probably the best thing to do with your grass clippings is just let them go back in the grass. You can skip one fertilization a year by practicing that. If you keep your lawn mowed at 4 inches high or higher, and as much as possible, only remove a third of the blade at a time, let those little, pieces of nitrogen go right back into the soil and improve your soil. If you want to use it for something else, all I really ask is that you don't bag it up and pay to throw it away, because that just really makes no sense. Number one, I'd like you to leave it on the lawn. If not, put some in your compost bin. A neighbor of mine would pile it up. He made a berm so that the water from the street wouldn't come into his yard. He did that over time. It became just part of his yard, and now grass is growing over that berm of grass clippings. Or you can use it as mulch. If you do, I would suggest only using it sparingly, because it can form a mat. They use grass, to make thatched huts and things like that. It can form a mat that won't let water through. Or we've all seen big pieces of grass being, sent away with storm water runoff. So use it, you can if you would like, but use it sparingly as a mulch, and don't put it on too thick. I would put a very, very thin layer and then something else heavier on top of it, if that's what you'd want to do. Or just create the self-mulching area, just like in the woods. Let the leaves fall naturally and leave them alone. Let the pine needles fall naturally. Leave them alone. Now, some people use shells or rock, which you are still going to consider part of nature. So in Florida-friendly landscaping, rock shells, things like that, they're great for paths, for driveways. That creates that nice permeable surface that lets water go through, as compared to cement or asphalt, something like that. Going to last a pretty long time. Although people do find with rocks in our sand, they disappear after a short period of time. They're going to sink into the sand. It is fire retardant. Can maybe for a little while increase some soil moisture, but the hazards are it's hot. It's going to reflect solar radiation. And also it's a hazard for mowers and tree trimmers. Might not be your window you break. It could be might not be yours, could be the neighbor's, could be somebody else's car going down the road, could be somebody riding a bicycle by. Got to be real careful there. I love rock. Rocks are some of my favorite things. I collect rocks where I'm allowed to, not where I'm not allowed to, when I'm traveling. But use it as accents, as decoration, and is in moderation. This here, all rock yards are not Florida friendly. You would not be certified as a Florida friendly yard with an all rock yard. Got to have plants to have a Florida friendly yard, plants that attract wildlife. What about this stuff? I've heard so many different things about this. So I have come to the point where it's too questionable for me to recommend. That's what it boils down to. The safety of it is not proven. Some people said it's made from recycled pallets. Well, that's probably fine if the pallets were never pressure treated. You don't want any kind of pressure treated wood, down on your mulch beds. And what is the dye made of? I can't find any answers, really. Maybe you can do research, if you really want to look into it, but I have to go by University of Florida or another land grant university's recommendation, not just anyone on the internet. So I know it's really research based, and there's still too many questions about this for me to really recommend it. Now there's a mixed hardwoods, probably doing just fine bottomland or upland forests harvested for paper or wood production. You happen to run across that's a fine mulch to use as well. Literally, it's pretty fine to use. Now, not recommended. Why is cypress mulch on my not recommended list? I'll tell you right now, don't panic if you have it in your yard. It's not going to hurt your yard. It doesn't have any, chemicals, unnatural, that you need to worry about. Once upon a time, it was advertised as, termite resistant. Why? Again, because of those allelopathic chemicals, and the oil that it might produce. But that's a thing of the past. What's happening now is all the old big cypress old trees. There's not many of them left. The ones that are left are hopefully protected. So the young cypress trees that they're harvesting now, they go in, they harvest them, shred them down immediately to sell to us as mulch. Those young trees don't have the allelopathic abilities that the old hardwood trees used to have. It's just not a sustainable practice. So because there's no longer that cypress oil from the old trees in the cypress mulch, it's just as attractive to termites as any other kind of wood. So it's unethical. We don't feel like we want to promote the type of practice of going in and clearing out wetlands just immediately to shred down, put in bags, put in front of the big box store, and sell to us as the cheapest mulch out there. It's not a Florida-friendly practice. If you utilize cypress mulch, you would not be certified as a Florida-friendly yard. And it's low in nutrients. So that is why it's an ethical reason. If you have it, like I said, don't panic. It won't hurt your yard. And as they say, once you know better, do better. So next time, get a different kind of mulch. Rubber mulch adds no organic matter to the soil. You want to use something that was once alive. And I don't mean a million years ago. Petroleum was, a dinosaur a million years ago. Rubber trees were once alive. This is not recognizable as a natural live product any longer. Doesn't add any organic matter to the soil, which is a good half of the reason we want mulch. But what is it adding to the soil? Could leach heavy metals and other chemicals into the soil and aquifers, or runoff into water bodies. Then you add this dye on top of it. What's that? Where is it coming from? What is it doing? And they have found that leachate. What is leachate? The best way I can describe that to you is at our county landfill. We have lined cells with all the trash in it. Well, there is still, it rains through there. So all that water that rained through the trash and goes into a holding area below it and then is drained off and put in a special storage place, that's called leachate. The garbage water, basically. So water from raining on this rubber and then flowing into a waterway, that can kill aquatic communities, including zooplankton, snails, fish, and algae. Not to mention it absorbs heat. It's not a great idea on a playground like this. You've all smelled it. It smells like rubber. It smells like what it is. And if you're grinding up tires, that may seem like a great way to recycle, but you know, all tires have steel belts of some sort in them now, and it's just probably impossible to get them all out. So rubber mulch, not recommended for many reasons. I would not recommend cocoa mulch. I have not seen people utilize it, but maybe in the more trendy urban areas, you know, it might be something people want to try because, you know, they're willing to try new things. It's cocoa, dogs, you know, chocolate, not a good idea. So if you have a dog, you don't want cocoa mulch around, but somebody has a dog who's going to go by your yard. So you don't want that liability. It's just not worth it. We don't recommend cocoa mulch either. And among the common landscape mulches, the ones that have the highest effect on your pH as in lowering it, what it would do is pine straw and pine bark. Those are very good at lowering or pH. A lot of people think oak leaves do, and I'm sure they have some effect. But I have a story. Years ago, I went out, saw someone who lived in a very shady neighborhood. I mean, that literally, it was a very nice mobile home park, had a lot of shade. It was very hard to grow any turf. And he had a beautiful yard that in which he raked up all the available oak leaves, which are all right there. And that was his ground cover, basically was oak leaves. And I mean like 6-8 inches of it in a lot of places. And to be certified Florida friendly, at that time you needed a soil test. So we did that. You would think all those oak trees, all those oak leaves, low pH, you had a 6.5, just like anyone else around here, which is the fairly common pH level around here. So oak leaves may have an effect, but it will take a long time. The ones that have the best color retention are again going to be pine bark and melaleuca. So to ensure you get a quality mulch brought to your yard, of course, you want to use avoiding recycled material that contains any pesticide residues whatsoever, including herbicide, especially herbicide, and we don't want insecticide either. You want fresh, good, but treated mulch. It should be free from weeds, seeds, ants, or any other pests. Partially compost the mulch to heat and inactivate the weed seeds. If you're getting it by the yard or in piles, as I said, set it aside, let it season for a while, or buy mulch that has been sterilized. It's your best bet. Now, we've talked about what kind of mulch to get. Let's talk about how to apply it. That's important too. You didn't think there were so many things to consider, did you, about mulch? It's very, very important that you only have a 2 or 3 inch layer. More than that will be detrimental. It won't be helpful. Also, don't push mulch up against tree trunks or plant stems. You want to pull that away. This says 2 to 3 inch space, maybe even more than that. Away from, you don't want the wet mulch up against the tree trunks. That's inviting insects, that's inviting fungus, all sorts of other problems, and wood rot and bacterial pathogens to come in. Also, we see this done from time to time. We call this volcano mulching. It wastes money, for one thing. That's a lot of money in mulch around those little trees. Also, what you're going to do here, and we talk about this in other programs, what can kill a plant or a tree or a shrub pretty quickly is planting it too deeply. Oh, if you planted it perfectly and covered it up with this much mulch, you have also effectively planted it too deeply. And what happens are the roots will start growing in the wrong direction. They're going to be looking for oxygen, and they're going to be trying to get out of that mess, and they're going to be growing up or around. Now, if this mulch dries, we talked about thatch before with grass clippings, this mulch can do the same thing. So how's the rain going to get to this mulch when this may actually kind of thatch over and shed the water away, acting more like an umbrella? And, you know, it would have to rain an awful lot to get through that mountain of mulch there to get down to those tree roots. Even if it could, even if it let it through. If you plant new trees, you have that root ball, you want to see that root ball on the top of the layer of soil. Don't put any mulch there for quite a while. You want the rain and the water that you're going to give it to get directly to those roots. You don't want mulch soaking up that water, acting like a sponge, taking it away from the plant. So it's a real careful balancing act there. And I said, this type of over mulching stops the roots from getting enough oxygen, traps moisture around the lower trunk, invites pests, and then you end up with circling roots, girding the tree, and a tree that just falls over one day and you didn't know why. So no volcano mulching. As we said, pull that mulch away from that tree, at least 2 to 3 inches, if not 6 or 8 inches away from the tree. Each tree, whether it's big like this one or little like this one, has what's called a flare. There's a colleague of mine that has moved to South Carolina, but he has a campaign going on saying, free the flare. Everywhere he goes, he wants to free the flare, keep those root flares exposed. That is the best way for any kind of tree, shrub, anything like that. Here's the part where we're going to talk a little bit about math. Math is not my stronghold, so we're just going to talk a little bit about it if you want to know the calculations of putting down mulch. So you're going to measure the area to be mulched in square feet and convert the desired depth to a fraction of a foot. So remember, no more than 2 to 3 inches. So we're going to go with 3 inches divided by 12 inches equals a quarter foot or 0.25 feet. So you multiply this fraction, 0.25, by the square foot measurement. For ease, we're going to say you had 100 square feet. So 0.25 times 100 square feet equals 25 cubic feet. So, but it is sold by the square yard. So we got to do some extra. So we divide 27 into 25, and you get 0.926. So to cover 100 square feet to a depth of 3 inches, you will need 0.926 cubic yards of mulch. Or you can go online and look for a mulch calculator. I bet you'll find it. Some big box stores even provide those for you and help you with those calculations as well. What about weed barriers under the mulch? You know, you don't want to put the mulch down and the hell these weeds pop up. Some people think I'm going to put a weed barrier under there. So let's talk about the different kinds. There's the plastic weed barriers. Yeah. Doesn't let that moisture through, doesn't let the rain through. You and I all know it's going to get caught up in some kind of equipment. It won't disintegrate ever. When you buy a new house and somebody has done that, have you not? been frustrated pulling that out of a bed, has to be removed by hand, or rabbits, squirrels, they're going to end up tearing it up as well. Weed cloth, the same thing, exact same thing. We've all been just as frustrated pulling up that black weed cloth as plastic. So, I mean, it will let some moisture through, but it really doesn't disintegrate. It usually just causes a lot of mess. Newspaper, if you're not using the glossy paper, it will compost into the soil. So there you go. You've got recycling going on right there. That'll work. Even cardboard boxes work great. Here it's showing here, and that cardboard obviously prevents them for a longer period of time than the newspaper. I've known people have talked about using carpet, turning it upside down and using it. I'm not certain about that. I was just reading, someone who's big into native plants will do that. But again, let's go back to that. What's it leaching into the soil? And a lot of our carpets are made of, synthetic, possibly even petroleum, plastics kind of materials. So I'd be leery about that. But if you have area throw rugs that are just cotton that you're getting rid of, that would be a great weed barrier as well. Now, how about weed prevention? Weed seeds can certainly blow onto that mulch and germinate. We've seen it many, many times. The bigger the mulch, the less likely that is to happen. You want to stay on top of it. Pull weeds as soon as they show their little heads there, and refresh mulch with a new top layer as often as needed. Just remember, low maintenance does not equal no maintenance. What about bugs? People complain, there are roaches, there are this or that in my mulch. Just remember, decomposing material is going to attract a certain amount of insects, but 99% of them in Florida, they're either are good guys, they're beneficial, or they're not harmful at all. If you are concerned about your house, keep an area, keep the mulch 6 to 8 inches away from the foundation of your house. And don't apply more than the 2 to 3, this is 4 inches of mulch. The more mulch you have, if you have that big volcano mulch thing, that's going to attract a lot more insects. If you have an ant issue, something like that, a big palmetto bug like this, I hate them, just like you do. But if it's outside, let it go, do its thing, as long as it's away from getting into the house. Ants, fire ants, something like that, spot treat where you have the problem. Don't go crazy and broadcast everywhere, just where you have that problem. Termites, I told you I'd get to this question. And I have some news for you who are maybe kind of new here. If you go out in your yard and you turn something over, some piece of wood or something, you're going to find termites. They're here. They're in our soil. They're in your yard right now. They're out there. Many materials attract them. If you want, to keep them away, I'm not saying it'll keep them away because they are out there, but it'll be more helpful to you to keep a 6 to 8 inch barrier of bare soil. A lot of people think, well, I'll just add rock. And some people do that. Then there's the opinion of, well, rock still retains moisture, so they can crawl across the moist rocks or under the moist rocks and still have access to your home. So one of the best ways is bare soil, 6 to 8 inches. They're less likely to cross that bare soil because that is the Sahara Desert for them. If they dry out, they die. As we said, rocks retain moisture. Bare soil is the best way to discourage them. But it just so happens you live in Florida. It is very I won't say very likely. Don't consider it unusual if you have to consult a termite professional. And that is something you absolutely need to have a professional come and take care of. But it's not the mulch that is going to attract it any more than anything else in your yard. So here are some things I want you to remember. Use organic materials, something that was once alive. Avoid cypress mulch. We talked about the ethical reasons for that. Avoid rubber mulch. Use rock in moderation. Don't use it as a mulch. Don't use it as a turf. Don't use it as a total ground cover. Only 2 to 3 inches of mulch. Pull it away from the trees, trunks, and plant stems. Refresh that mulch as needed. Sometimes you only need to top dress it to refresh it again. Sometimes you'll need just to keep it all replaced. And sometimes what people do, say you just want that a certain look. Okay, well, utilize what you're given free in your yard. Utilize leaves, twigs, pine needles, things like that. And then put a top layer of that better looking, quote, quote, more traditional mulch over top of it. To save you money. Also, give those good things to the soil as well. Again, if you're worried about termites, keep that 6 inch barrier of bare soil or sand between your house and the plant beds or the turf. There's one more thing that I haven't added here, and I said I was going to address because it's something I've learned recently. I've been trying to grow a wildflower bed, native flower bed, butterfly garden, things like that. And I want it to reseed. Well, I have found, and I also have put in sunshine mimosa, which grows as a ground cover, spreads along the ground. I put it in with the chunky big pine bark, and I have since learned those wildflower seeds and that sunshine mimosa, they need bare dirt to fall on or to crawl along and attach itself to, or for the seed to find and to grow. So as much as, we've been taught mulch, 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 it's a very, very good thing. But in some certain circumstances, try and look for the real finer type of mulch that allows those wildflowers or even a ground cover, such as sunshine mimosa, to have some access to the bare dirt as well. Just something I figured I better throw in there for you. Here are some ways to find out about upcoming programs. You can always go to my Facebook page, Hernando FFL program. If you'd like a PDF copy of this particular program or have any other questions, please email me at LillyB, LILLYB, at hernandocounty.us. Now, this will be recorded and shown on Hernando County Government YouTube, as well as my Facebook page. So going to Hernando County Government YouTube, you will find many, many videos on Florida-friendly landscaping and the different aspects. Here are some upcoming opportunities and classes. The end of October, we're going to have 2 different ways of having rain barrel workshops. One is in person at beautiful Chinsegat Conservation Center out in the woods. That is just rain barrels. Then the next day, we'll have a virtual rain barrel and compost bin workshop. That'll be at 6 in the evening. And how that works is the next day, you come to Hernando County Utilities between 11 and 1 to pick up your items. To find out more information, either way about a rain barrel or a compost bin, the first step is emailing me. Again, LillyB at hernandocounty.us. If you're watching this past October, We hold them pretty much monthly, not in the month of December, but every other month we have them. So feel free to email me, LillyB@hernandocounty.us, and ask about rain barrel workshops or compost bin workshops. And here are other classes we have coming up as well. And here's just one thing I want to leave you with. This again is from, found this on Facebook, I believe. And I think it's going to be my motto from now on. You don't have to be good at gardening for gardening to be good at you, good for you. So just enjoy what you're doing. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you and have a great day.